So, are plants the miracle solution for fixing our increasingly toxic planet? Well, the answer is complicated. Phytoremediation is a trending topic among the scientific community right now, as well as for small gardeners and homesteaders. So I decided to spend a little bit of time learning what phytoremediation is, how it works, and whether or not this concept can be applied on a small family homestead. So let's answer some questions about phytoremediation. Phytoremediation is a process of removing toxins from soils and water systems using plants. Now there's another type of phytoremediation called mycoremediation, which uses fungi to remove toxins. In this video, we are going to focus on phytoremediation as it applies to the plant kingdom. Like many of you, I have some serious concerns about what could potentially end up in the soils and water systems in my area, as well as what might already be there. The latest story hitting the news cycle has been focused around the Ohio train derailment and the toxins that were released into the air and the water and the soils in the surrounding area within East Palestine and the surrounding towns. And while I don't live in Ohio, these concerns about environmental toxins are prevalent everywhere. Even in my beautiful state of Maine, which is 70% forested, I believe that we are the most forested state in the US. And you might think because we don't live in a heavily urbanized environment that we don't have to worry about these types of toxins, but unfortunately we do. So an example that hits close to home for me is the issues surrounding PFAS. PFAS are microplastics, also known as forever chemicals, that persist in our environment long after their intended use. These chemicals are found in our soils, in our water, in rain, and it eventually ends up in our blood and in the bodies of the creatures that we consume. And when microplastics are consumed, they cause tons of issues in our bodies like inflammation, heart disease, kidney problems, and that's just to name a few. So how did these contaminants end up in our soils, our waters, even in our eggs, poultry, and local game? Historically, municipalities within Maine approved the use of treated wastewater to use as a nitrogen-rich fertilizer on farmlands. The farmers would spread this onto their soils to grow their crops. And unfortunately, we did not know that this treated wastewater contained harmful levels of PFAS. And now that we're discovering this problem, it is not only affecting the farms that use the treated wastewater, but also any farms in the surrounding area. A lot of organic, small-scale operations are having their soils tested, only to find out that their soils contain harmful levels of PFAS and that the organic produce that they're selling also contains harmful levels of PFAS. This is essentially shutting down their businesses through no fault of their own. They didn't even use the treated wastewater, and yet it is having an impact on their business and the safety of the produce that they sell. So the good news is the state of Maine is taking action. They have opened up a number of cooperative extension offices that focus on soil testing. So whether you are doing large-scale agriculture or you just have a backyard homestead, you can get your soils tested to see if there are harmful levels of PFAS. In addition to that, the state of Maine is working with the University of Maine to research methods of remediating soils of PFAS, including phytoremediation. Unfortunately, since this problem has just recently been discovered, there's not a lot of conclusive research about using plants to remove PFAS. So in this video, we're going to focus on an area that has been extensively studied with conclusive results, which is using phytoremediation to remove toxic amounts of heavy metals from soils. A little disclaimer before we get started, not all of the plants that I mention in this video will be suitable for your region depending on where you live, and some may even be invasive in your area. So I strongly recommend that you do your due diligence and research these plants before you use them as I'm gonna say phytoremediators. I don't know if that is the proper term or even a word at all, but before you use these plants for phytoremediation. Also, don't forget to hit the like button down below and subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more content like this. So why do we care about heavy metals in the soil? We know that plants need minerals like copper, zinc, iron, and manganese in order to grow. So why would we want to remove these things? Like our own bodies, a certain amount of minerals is essential, whereas too much can be a bad thing. So think sodium. Sodium is an essential mineral in our bodies. It is present in our blood, but we know that too much sodium can kill you. Well, the same is true for plants when it comes to certain minerals. And even if a plant can tolerate what is considered a toxic amount of heavy metals, it can have detrimental effects on anything that eats the plant. So amphibians, pollinators, and mammals like ourselves, if we eat these plants that contain toxic amounts of heavy metals, it can have detrimental effects on our own bodies. There is a great publication that lists various heavy metals and their effects on the human body, as well as the various types of industries and products that produce waste containing heavy metals. I'll link the paper in the description for anyone who is interested in reading more. So phytoremediation can be used to balance the amount of heavy metals within a soil to a level that is acceptable for plants, while also making those plants safe for human consumption. So how does phytoremediation work? There are two main ways that plants deal with toxins. One strategy is through avoidance, and in avoidance, certain plants are actually able to alter the pH or the conditions within the rhizosphere, which is the underground root network that prevent the plant from taking up these toxins. Another avoidance strategy involves the plants taking the toxins into their root systems, but producing chemicals that prevent those toxins from migrating up into the aerial parts of the plant. Another strategy is tolerance, and these plants will take in harmful heavy metals and produce a chemical that bonds with these metal ions and separates the toxic metals from parts of the plant that are important for metabolic processes like photosynthesis and nutrient uptake. Both toxin-avoidant and toxin-tolerant plants can be used for phytoremediation, but more often you will hear about toxin-tolerant plants, as these plants will take up the heavy metals into the aerial parts of the plant, and then you can cut those plants down and remove them from the area and remove the toxins from the soil entirely. So let's list some hyperaccumulators, that is, plants that effectively remove a wide range of toxins from the soil, or is very effective at removing one or two types of toxins. Sunflower can be used to remove arsenic, zinc, chromium, copper, and manganese. These plants are often used in community gardens in urban environments to treat soils before adding plants meant for human consumption. Hemp is a non-flowering version of marijuana, and it can remove cadmium, nickel, and lead from the soil. Canola is a great field crop that can be used to remove cadmium and lead as well as zinc, and makes a great green manure. Cattails, also known as bulrushes, are a great option for filtering swamps, ponds, and watersheds. Not only do they remove phosphorus and lead, but they can also remove excess nitrogen from the soil, typically caused by sewage. And there are many types of ferns, like ladder fern, that can be used to remove a variety of heavy metals like arsenic, lead, chromium, and much more. Ferns are a classic soil conditioner that can thrive in many environments. Now, like I mentioned before, some plants are great at avoiding toxins altogether, and these plants can be used in phytoremediation through a method called phytostabilization. And in phytostabilization, the plants don't take the toxins into the aerial parts, but it does effectively trap the toxins within the rhizosphere. So these plants essentially create a buffer zone where they capture toxins in a kind of net and prevent your toxin-sensitive plants and crops from being contaminated, while allowing more time for the toxins to break down and disperse naturally over time. So here are some plants that you can use to prevent the leaching of contaminants into your soils and into your water systems. Poplars are part of the genus Populus, and this includes trees like willows, aspens, and cottonwoods. These trees are currently used to remediate municipal wastewater in Oregon, Idaho, and Washington. Red fescue is a type of grass that stabilizes arsenic-rich soils that can occur near mining operations, preventing contamination of the surrounding area. Catgrass is another phytostabilizing grass that stabilizes arsenic, cadmium, lead, and zinc. And finally, Chinese silvergrass stabilizes cadmium. It's also a very beautiful plant that can be used ornamentally. Now you may be wondering, what happens to the hyperaccumulators that remove the toxins from the soil? If we let these plants break down right where they are, don't the toxins just leach right back into the soil? Well, the answer is unfortunately yes. There are additional steps that need to take place in order for phytoremediation to be the most effective. There is some research that has been done into what to do with biohazardous waste. Some methods involve burning the plants and using a catalytic converter to capture the gases and separate the toxins and the toxic fumes from the biomaterial. And then there's other equally complex processes that are high cost and involve the use of chemicals. But for the small-time gardener and homesteader, there is fortunately another option, and that involves composting or fermenting the biohazardous waste. So a 2020 study found that a humus-rich compost increased the diversity and biomass of a certain group of heavy metal tolerant bacteria, and these bacteria were able to break down and reduce the bioavailability of these heavy metals within the soil, reducing the leachate by 60 to 80%. The same paper that covers the effects of heavy metals also includes a list of different biomaterials that can be used to break down and reduce the leaching of heavy metals into soils. Again, this paper is linked in the description below. What I find wonderful about this research is that it really drives home the idea that, given the time and space, a diversity of plants and microorganisms can work together to break down almost any environmental toxin. We simply must provide the space and time to allow nature to facilitate these processes. So even briefly touching on this topic, you can see that phytoremediation is a fairly complex process that is unfortunately not just as simple as putting a plant into the ground and then all of the toxins in your soils magically disappear. And some of you may be wondering if it's even worth your time to explore this method of toxin removal. Well, personally, I do believe that it's worth it. I also think that as public awareness and interest in phytoremediation grows, it will encourage more scientific research, expanding into areas like phytoremediation for PFAS, for persistent herbicides and pesticides. And as we name and identify more species of plants and fungi that can contribute to making our planet less poisonous, we can help others to see just how important diverse ecosystems are in improving our quality of life. And the best part is they do this for us for free. I hope that you found this video helpful and informative. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button down below and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.